Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bible Hour. And it would seem that the camera has reset itself again. So let's go into the customary thingy, which probably won't make a difference now that we are live. No? What about there? No. And none there. So that should be all that we are doing. Amazing stuff. Oh, okay, that's not too bad. Welcome, ladies and gents, to the Bible Hour. It is day 60. Yes, the final day of the original prediction. I have dressed up for the occasion because today is possibly our last day. Are we going to make it to the end of the Bible? We will see. Parkhead Church, and welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Oh, message retracted. There we go. Chris Henry, hello. Are we expecting to be up here? It's the last day, Chris Henry. It's day 60. Had to say hi. The Bunces have joined us as well for day 60 live. It is a big occasion. Are we going to make it to the end of Revelation? Chris Williams, why so smart? Because it's possibly the last day. Today could be the day where we finish the Bible. If we don't, we'll have to have a day 61. But that's not going to happen, is it? Thank you very much, Phil Talman. Let's try and get that other Ferrari in there. All right, let's get this show on the road. Let's do bish bash bosh to the left there. Yeesh. That there. I'm going to drop the brightness a touch. It's a bit bright for me, this. Oh, look at that. That's wonderful. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. Chronicles 2:35. You mean 2 Chronicles 35, or is it Chronicles chapter 2 verse 35? I'm confused. I'm not staying. I'm saying hi. We're only on day 41 and don't want any spoilers. Wow, you've dropped 19 days behind, Sarah Bunce. What happened? Okay, I'll go a touch brighter. Look at that. Look at that. You've had 5 kids on top of the others. Sheesh. Wowee, that's like 10 now. All right, Sarah Bunce, it's good to see you. There may be a day 61. I guess you'll find out in 19 days. Good evening, Petit Bois. So day 41, Sarah Bunce, what book is that? You're in Deuteronomy or something, are you? Just started Kings. All right. Well, we're at 2 Chronicles, which is pretty much the same thing, but a bit different. Pretty much the same thing, but a bit different. Different perspective, different purpose, but a lot of crossover. Written at a different time. Camera is loving the strobing shirt pattern. Yeah, I bet. Good evening, North Star. Morning. For those that are interested, I have about 45 to 50 minutes a day at the moment to just do something which is non-work related or non-father related. And I like playing board games. In fact, I have quite the collection. In fact, they should be called tabletop games because they're not all board games. And I'm currently playing a tabletop game called Gloomhaven, and it's possibly becoming my favorite tabletop game of all time. But it is an absolute monster. We're talking like a mammoth. A forest had to be cut down for all the bits of pieces to be in that one. And if you do not like long, complicated, drawn out over weeks and months types of games, don't go to Gloomhaven. In fact, don't go to Gloomhaven if you're new to the tabletop game world, because it is like a complexity out of 5, it's like a 4.5, which is crazy. But if you do like long-winded role-playing games, character development, pen and paper statistics, upgrading characters, dungeon crawling, ghouls slaying, monster defeating characters, go to Gloomhaven. But don't do it on your own, unless you're an absolute nutter. So I'm doing it on my own. And it's tough. And it's tough. There are 2 rule books, each the size of like that. So I've spent 3 weeks just setting the game up, chipping away at it every day. All right, that's enough about me. Evening all. Wow, a tie. You scroll. Well, thank you, Sue Roberts. What it is, because it's the possible last day of Bible Hour, we might finish Revelation today. I thought I'd dress up and mark the occasion. Of course, if we don't, there will be a day 61. You never know. NT Wright is broadcasting live, but I am here. NT Wright or Bible Hour, I'd go Bible Hour every time. Up until, unless he's doing his commentaries from like the 1970s on Colossians or something. Other than that, you're better off with Bible Hour. I think his 800 page book on the resurrection is the most comprehensive book on the resurrection that exists. Sarah Bunce, what are the gifts you have at the side of you today? I have the 2 Ferraris, which are sponsoring the show until they're bettered, and Phil Townley's Rennies. Matthew Bunce. Oh, Ben Ricketts. Evening. Good evening, sir. Good to see you. Matthew Bunce. Hi, boy. Just thought I'd say hi too. All right. Welcome on in, Matthew Bunce. Hi, everyone. I was just going to use that intro. Please, not the last day. Well, if we don't make it to Revelation, I think we might, but if we don't. All right, here we go. So we are creeping to the end of 2 Chronicles, and Josiah is doing his thing, and I think we're going to see another law of highest principle that we like to change the name of every day. Who's the Park End admin tonight? Good question. I think I know. I think it's Nick. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bible Hour, day 60, the 60th hour of reading the Bible. But if you cut out the things I say, we're probably on about the 4th hour of reading the Bible. We learn about Jesus and church. And someone sent a really irritating article yesterday, and it was printed by a theological college, and it was so annoying and so undermining of the work of Jesus in the Old Testament that I could not resist but say a few words back. And I'll let you know how that correspondence goes. But we focus on Jesus and church, which is the message of the universe, not just the Old Testament and New Testament, but the universe. All right, here we go. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Josiah celebrates Passover. Then Josiah announced that the Passover of the Lord would be celebrated in Jerusalem. And so the Passover lamb was slaughtered on the 14th day of the first month. Josiah also assigned the priests to their duties and encouraged them in their work at the temple of the Lord. He issued this order to the Levites, who were to teach all Israel and who had been set apart to serve the Lord. Put the holy ark in the temple that was built by Solomon, son of David, the king of Israel. You no longer need to carry it back and forth on your shoulders. Now spend your time serving the Lord your God and his people, Israel. Report for duty according to the family divisions of your ancestors, following the directions of King David of Israel and the directions of his son Solomon. Then stand in the sanctuary at the place appointed for your family division and help the families assigned to you as they bring their offerings to the table. Slaughter the Passover lambs, purify yourself, and prepare to help those who come. Follow all the directions that the Lord gave through Moses. Then Josiah provided 30,000 lambs and young goats for the people's Passover offerings, along with 3,000 cattle, all from the king's own flocks and herds. The king's officials also made willing contributions to the people, priests and Levites, Hilkiah, Zechariah, Jehiel. The administrators of God's temple gave the priests 2,600 lambs and young goats and 3,000 cattle as Passover offerings. The Levite leaders, Conaniah and his brothers Shemaiah and Nethanel, as well as Hashabiah, Jeiel, and Jozabad, gave 5,000 lambs and young goats and 500 cattle to the Levites for their Passover offerings. When everything was ready for the Passover celebration, the priests and the Levites took their places, organized by their divisions, as the king had commanded. The Levites then slaughtered the Passover lambs and presented the blood to the priests, who sprinkled the blood on the altar while the Levites prepared the animals. They divided the burnt offerings among the people by their family groups so they could offer them to the Lord as prescribed in the book of Moses. They did the same with the cattle. Then they roasted the Passover lambs as prescribed, and they boiled the holy offerings in pots, kettles, and pans, and brought them out quickly so the people could eat them. Afterward, the Levites prepared Passover offerings for themselves and for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, because the priests had been busy from morning till night, offering the burnt offerings and the fat portions. The Levites took responsibility for all these preparations. The musicians, descendants of Asaph, were in their assigned places, following the commands that had been given by David, Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, the king's seer. The gatekeepers guarded the gates and did not need to leave their posts of duty, for their Passover offerings were prepared for them by the fellow Levites. Everybody's looking after each other in this church. We're supporting each other, making sure we can do our roles okay. And if we can't, someone will cover for us. Or if something's taking us away from our role, someone will step in and take that job. The entire ceremony for the Lord's Passover was completed that day. All the burnt offerings were sacrificed on the altar of the Lord as King Josiah had commanded. All the Israelites present in Jerusalem celebrated the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days. Never since the time of the prophet Samuel had there been such a Passover. None of the kings of Israel had ever kept a Passover as Josiah did, involving all the priests and Levites, all the people of Jerusalem, and people from all over Judah and Israel. The Passover was celebrated in the 18th year of Josiah's reign. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure it came through in this version. Did we read? Okay. After Josiah had finished restoring the temple, King Necho of Egypt led his army up from Egypt to do battle at Carchemish on the Euphrates River, and Josiah and his army marched out to fight him. But King Necho sent messengers to Josiah with this message: "What do you want with me, King of Judah? I have no quarrel with you today. I am on my way to fight another nation, and God has told me to hurry. Do not interfere with God who is with me, or he will destroy you." But Josiah refused to listen to Necho, to whom God had indeed spoken, and he would not turn back. Instead, he disguised himself and led his army into battle on the plain of Megiddo. But the enemy archers hit King Josiah with their arrows and wounded him. He cried out to his men, "Take me from the battle, for I am badly wounded." So they lifted Josiah out of his chariot and placed him in another chariot. Then they brought him back to Jerusalem, where he died. He was buried there in the royal cemetery, and all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for him. The prophet Jeremiah composed funeral songs for Josiah. And to this day, choirs still sing these sad songs about his death. These songs of sorrow have become a tradition and are recorded in the book of Laments. Laments, lamentations, laments. The rest of the events of Josiah's reign and his acts of devotion, carried out according to what was written in the law of the Lord, from beginning to end, are all recorded in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Welcome on into the Bible Hour. It is day 60. It is the last day of our scheduled Bible reading because we can read the Bible in 60 hours. No problem. Well done to everyone that has made it all the way through. We might well tie it all up tonight if we just get from 2 Chronicles chapter 36 to Revelation chapter 21. We're there, and we have got 48 minutes to do it, so let's get involved. 2 Chronicles chapter 36. The problem, though, we've got is the next book. I like it so much, I'm going to get slightly hyperactive about it and talk a bit about it. But don't worry, we'll do it. We'll make it. It's no doubt about it. Jehoahaz rules in Judah. Then the people of the land took Josiah's son Jehoahaz and made him the next king in Jerusalem. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. Then he was deposed by the king of Egypt, who demanded that Judah pay 7,500 pounds of silver and 75,000 pounds of gold as tribute. The king of Egypt then installed Eliakim, the brother of Jehoahaz, as the next king of Judah and Jerusalem, and he changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim. We know this. Then Necho took Jehoahaz to Egypt as a prisoner. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord his God. Then King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and captured it. He bound Jehoiakim in bronze chains and led him away to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took some of the treasures from the temple of the Lord, and he placed them in his palace in Babylon. The rest of the events of Jehoiakim's reign, including all the evil things he did and everything found against him, are recorded in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Then his son Jehoiachin became the next thing. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months and 10 days. Jehoiachin did what was evil in the Lord's sight. In the spring of the year, King Nebuchadnezzar took Jehoiachin to Babylon. Many treasures from the temple of the Lord were also taken to Babylon at that time. And Nebuchadnezzar installed Jehoiachin's uncle, Zedekiah, as the next king in Judah and Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. But Zedekiah did what was evil in the sight of the Lord his God, and he refused to humble himself when the prophet Jeremiah spoke to him directly from the Lord. That's not good, is it? When the Lord speaks through church or his word or his people, and we refuse to listen. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar. So there's a few skirmishes in the last bits of these kingdoms. Even though he had taken an oath of loyalty in God's name, Zedekiah was a hard and stubborn man, refusing to turn to the Lord, the God of Israel. Likewise, all the leaders of the priests and the people became more and more unfaithful. They followed all the pagan practices of the surrounding nation, desecrating the temple of the Lord that had been consecrated in Jerusalem. The Lord, the God of their ancestors, repeatedly sent his prophets to warn them, for he had compassion on his people and his temple. But the people mocked these messengers of God and despised their words. They scoffed at the prophets until the Lord's anger could no longer be restrained and nothing could be done. So the Lord brought the king of Babylon against them. The Babylonians killed Judah's young men, even chasing after them into the temple. So the Babylonians, I think this is like the third wave now, and it's the third wave where King Neb actually comes to Jerusalem and just ransacks it. So there's been a few skirmishes, but this is it now. This is curtains, ladies and gentlemen. I should have worn a black tie. The Babylonian killed Judah's young men, even chasing after them into the temple. They had no pity on the people, killing both young men and young women and the old and the infirm. God handed all of them over to Nebuchadnezzar. The king took home to Babylon all the articles, large and small, used in the temple of God, and the treasures from both the Lord's temple and from the palace of the king of his officials. Then his army burned the temple of God, tore down the walls of Jerusalem, burned all the palaces, and completely destroyed everything of value. The theological significance of that structure coming down in that land, knowing what it all represents, is astronomical. The few who survived were taken as exiles to Babylon, and they became servants to the king and his sons until the kingdom of Persia came to power. So the messengers of the Lord spoken through Jeremiah was fulfilled. The land finally enjoyed its Sabbath rest, lying desolate until the 70 years were fulfilled, just as the prophet had said. Cyrus allows the exiles to return. So quite a chunk of history is squashed in there. And of course, we're going to be soon peering in to those bits through Daniel, Ezra. Oh, no, that's a bit after. Daniel, the first bits of Ezra, Esther, Jeremiah, that sort of stuff. In the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, the Lord fulfilled the prophecy he had given through Jeremiah. He stirred the heart of Cyrus to put this proclamation in writing and to send it throughout his kingdom. This is what the king of Cyrus of Persia says: "The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of earth. He has appointed me to build him a temple at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Any of you who are his people may go, therefore, for this task. And may the Lord your God be with you. Isn't that astonishing? Right at the end of that book, the Lord's anointed is a Persian king, not a believer of sorts. And the Lord stirs him up spiritually to make this decree that they can now go back and rebuild their heaven on earth and their church. It's fascinating stuff that Cyrus is the Lord's anointed. He's called that in Isaiah, isn't he? So there we have 2 Chronicles, an appendix of 1 and 2 Kings, but it's all a bit different before the English Bible divided it all up. So it's like a summary, but it does add in other important perspectives. It's written at a different time as well, but important books there to see all the perspectives of the history of Israel. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to Ezra chapter 1. I can't wipe the smile off my face. Bible Hour goes on. You're not insinuating that we're not going to make it, are you, North Star? All right. I'd like to say a few things about Ezra before we jump in, because, you know, sometimes I do want to, and I do want to. So let's just recap some history now, because it's all going to go a bit mental now. So 586 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar burns the temple to the ground. This book is now about the building back of it. The second temple. Of course, Herod gets involved in just before Jesus's day, and he then extends it again, and then it's called Herod's temple, and he tweaks it and I think ruins it. And then the Romans destroy that in 70 AD. And you know today that the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall, still exists today. So we are still in the heart of real history here, folks. So don't forget the temple, because we're about to rebuild it now, and this is important, was the picture of the universe. It was a place to go where God's holiness was displayed, where repentance could be offered, where atonement was made for sins, where there was cleansing of the land. Worship and praise happen there. Thanksgiving happens there. I won't get into why it's not in the new heavens and the new earth. We'll do that in Revelation in half an hour. But let's go over the sequence of kings, because this is important now for the next few books, especially with Daniel and Esther coming up. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the first major destroyer. Cyrus, king of Persia, because Babylon falls to Persia. Then we're going to see Darius of Persia. He's the king. Then Xerxes. A few films have been made about him recently. And then of Persia. And then Artaxerxes, king of Persia. Now, some of those are going to get a mention in this book coming up. And all that matters is God remains faithful to his church and his promised Messiah. Then after that, you basically get the Greeks, then you get the Romans, then you get the Visigoths, the Mongols, the Muslim conquests, then you get European colonialism, and now basically any empire going forward is going to be a commercial one. And it's just helpful to take time there to put this into perspective. This is all just, we are living in exactly the same type of thing. The story is about God's church. Empires have come and gone. We're in one at the moment, and the focus still needs to be on church. Be students of history from that perspective. We are here in this present situation as whatever denominations we're part of in Bible Hour, and it's no accident, and it's all leading from this same story that we're reading now. So the Assyrians were dominant the 8th and 7th century BC. They wiped out the north of the church land. We read that in 2 Kings. Assyria then basically just gets trampled out by the Babylonians. Then the Babylonians have skirmishes with the ancient church, and then they knock it all down about on the 3rd wave. Then Babylon is replaced by Persia, and so yeah, 600 BC, temples gone to pot. Everybody's gone to Babylon, bar a few. Daniel's in the mix. We're going to be hearing about them. But this is leading to Ezra. 70 years later, church members are allowed back under Cyrus, the Persian king, and Joshua, the high priest, and Zerubbabel, the governor. There's about 40,000 of them. And the aim is to replant church. So the first 6 chapters is like the first wave, and then 7 onwards is when Ezra gets involved to finish it off, like 80 years later. So it takes a long time, this. And the first 6 chapters is Ezra firing up the second wave to finish the job off. They're just looking back at what happened with the first lot. And that's the first 6 chapters coming up. I'm not sure I explained that very well. So yeah, anyway. Zion, the Jerusalem, was supposed to be a place where all the nations could come and find life. It was a physical place to go to see heaven on earth. Church is meant to flourish there. God causes church to flourish. It was an indicator to the whole wide world, the lost pagan nations, that the Lord Jesus is king and he gives life. So rebuilding it from now on is a massive thing. And basically what happens is people like us just get the buzz for church planting, and off they go, and they come back to the deserted land with nothing and no money, but they believe in the cause and they stand for church. And in chapter 2, which I'm looking forward to, their names are there. They're like the most important people ever, but they're just straightforward people who thought church is worth living and dying for. All right, so without further ado, incidentally, I think I could make a case that it's Daniel that brought Cyrus's attention to this need, because in Isaiah 44 and 45, you see a bit of backstory here, and I think it was probably Daniel who was knocking about, because he lived into Cyrus's reign. I think he switched him on to this cause. Chapter 1. Here we go. Man, I'm beginning to wonder if we're going to make it tonight. Still 33 minutes to go. Cyrus allows the exiles to return. In the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, the Lord fulfilled the prophecy he had given through Jeremiah. He stirred the heart of Cyrus to put this proclamation in writing and to send it throughout his kingdom. This is what King Cyrus of Persia says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms on earth. He has appointed me to build him a temple at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Any of you who are his people may go to Jerusalem in Judah to rebuild this temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, who lives in Jerusalem. Bible Hour, if you're asking, should we be trying to claim Jerusalem back now and rebuild a temple there and everybody go there to worship because that's where God lives? Well, I think the short answer to that is no, because what you find in the movement of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2 is church broadens out to the whole wide world, and for the first time ever, Gentile nations form churches in their own languages, cultures, and areas. So I wouldn't be too worried about that for you. Any of you who are his people may go to Jerusalem in Judah to rebuild this temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, who lives in Jerusalem. And may your God be with you. Nice. Wherever his Jewish remnant is found, let their neighbors contribute toward their expenses by giving them silver and gold, supplies for the journey and livestock, as well as a voluntary offering for the temple of God in Jerusalem. Then God stirred the hearts of the priests and the Levites and the leaders of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin to go to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple of the Lord. And all their neighbors assisted by giving them articles of silver and gold and supplies for the journey and livestock. They gave them many valuable gifts in addition to all the voluntary offerings. King Cyrus himself brought out the articles that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the Lord's temple in Jerusalem and had placed in the temple of his own gods. Cyrus directed Mithridath, the treasurer of Persia, to count these items and present them to Sheshbazzar, the leader of the exiles returning to Judah. Is this the first use of the term Jewish? Yes. It is after the exile that they're first called Jews. I'm just trying to remember, has there been a post-exilic reference that we've read so far? No, it's all been the nation of Israel. It's all been Israel or my chosen people or the ecclesia or body or gathering. This is the list of the items that were returned. Gold basins, 30. Silver basins, 1,000. Silver incense burners, 29. Gold bowls, 30. Silver bowls, 410. Other items, 1,000. In all, there were 5,400 articles of gold and silver. Sheshbazzar brought all of these along when the exiles went from Babylon to Jerusalem. Okay, all right. Now, take 1 minute, because my favorite verses ever, well, this month's favorite verses ever are coming up. So go and grab a pineapple upside down cake, an omelette, a lamb kebab, a chunk of lettuce, and we'll be back in 38 seconds. Cara, you are a gaming geek and you call Cliff Richard names pots and kettles. Thank you, Cara. Another uplifting message from my favorite church member. Howell George in the house. We're just on a break before we get to some of my favorite verses ever. You've just missed an Owen overview of history in terms of the various empires that are kicking about and in what order, and how just basic church members are about to give up everything and go back into the wilderness because they believe in the cause. It's tie day because this is potentially the last day we could get to Revelation at this speed. If not, we'll meet back here tomorrow and just finish it off. Sue Roberts, Wiener Schnitzel, Rachel Freeman, a pink tie. Been listening for 30 minutes and thought you had a stand-in, then realized it was you in a tie. Thank you, Rachel. I was going to read John Piper, but this is better. Obviously, this is better. Favorite church member sandwich. Harry was hoping his mate Brian Robson Ranking was going to pop in and say hello. That is another joke that I don't understand. I don't understand Park End's jokes. I never do. It's just on an academic level beyond me. Okay, here we go. I think Ezra chapter 2 causes us in 2020 and challenges us to live for something worthwhile, to rebuild Zion, the church, to speak about Jesus when no one else is. Not so much God or gospel or grace that we can, but Jesus and his name, which is high above all other names, without embarrassment. Do you believe this as we get into this now? Outside of Jesus and his kingdom, there is only death and decay, and nothing outlasts the kingdom of Zion. Do you believe that? Okay, then let's jump in. Let's go and see our ancestors that believed it. Chapter 2. Here is the list of the Jewish exiles from the provinces who returned from their captivity. King Nebuchadnezzar had deported them to Babylon, but now they returned to Jerusalem and the other towns in Judah where they originally lived. Ooh, hold on. Wrong page. Okay, their leaders were Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Seraiah, Reelaiah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mizpar, Bigvai, Rehum, and Baanah. This is the number of men of Israel who returned from exile. Remember, the seemingly most dull chapters in the Bible, they're always the best. The family of Paros, 2,172. So we're learning now about the people that went back. The family of Shephatiah, 372. The family of Ara, 775. The family of Pahath Moab, descendants of Jeshua and Joab, 2,812. The family of Elam, 1,254. The family of Zatu, 945. The family of Zakkai, 760. The family of Bani, 642. The family of Bebai, 623. The family of Asgad, 1,222. The family of Adonakam, 666. The family of Bigvai, 2,056. The family of Adin, 454. The family of Eted, descendant of Hezekiah, 98. The family of Bezai, 323. The family of Jorah, 112. The family of Hashum, 223. The family of Gibeon, 95. The people of Bethlehem, 123. The people of Notapha, 56. The people of Anathoth, 128. The people of Beth Asmabeth, 42. The people of Kiriath Jearim, Keph-Ira, and Beeroth, 743. The people of Ramah and Geba, 621. It's coming. It's coming. The people of Michmash, 122. The people of Beth and Ai, 223. The citizens of Nebo, 52. The citizens of Magbish, 156. Citizens of West Elam, 1,254. The citizens of Harim, 320. The citizens of Lod, Hadid, and Yoko, 725. The citizens of Jericho, 345. The citizens of Sina, 3,630. These are the priests who returned from exile. The family of Jedaiah, through the line of Jeshua, 973. You need the priests. You need the priests. The whole system's based around the priest. The family of Immer, 1,052. The family of Pashur, 1,247. The family of Harim, 1,017. These are the Levites who returned from exile. The families of Jeshua and Kadmiel, descendants of Hodaviah, 74. The singers of the families of Asaph, 128. The gatekeepers of the families of Shalom, Eter, Talmon, Akub, Hatita, and 139. Oh, and Shobai. I think it's going to be on the next page, my favorite verses, my favorite two. The descendants of the following temple servants returned from exile. You need the temple servants. Ziha, Hashpur, Tabaoth, Karos, Siaya, Pardon, Lebanana, Hagabah, Akub, Hagib, Shalmai, Hanan, Gidel, Gaha, Reaha, Rezin, Nekoda, Gazam, Uza, Pasia, Bezai, Asna, Meunim, Nafusim, Bakbuk, Hakubu, Hahu, Belzuth, Mihanda, Hanjush. It's got a bit Japanese. It's Bakos, Sisera, Tima, Neziah, and Hapitha. The descendants of these servants of King Solomon returned from exile. Sotai has, I bet he's got a lot of descendants, if you know what I mean. Sotai has Hazafereth, Peruda, Jala, Darkon, Gidel, Shephatiah, Hatil, Pokereth, Hazibiam, and Ami. In all, the temple servants and the descendants of Solomon's servants numbered 392. Okay, here we go. Another group returned at this time from the towns of Tel Melah, Tel Harash, Karub, Aden, and Immer. However, they could not prove that they or their families were descendants of Israel. This group included the families of Del-Aiah, Tobiah, and Nekoda, a total of 652 people. That's two of my favorite verses ever. And let me tell you why. Because in the middle of the Babylonian carnage, and then the subsequent Persian carnage, and then the allowance to return, there are 652 people who are nobodies. And they can't prove their family lineage or their credit or their value. They're outsiders. They're new to church. They've just got the vision. They just suddenly believe in the cause. They know that you cannot get Jesus and reject his bride. The two go together. So they have given everything to go with the recognizable church. Looks like they're first generation believers. They can't even point to anyone of value in their family tree who's doing anything significant in the kingdom of God so far. But they join the life of the church. They join the cause. And because this is the only cause that outlasts all other causes, their names are in the Lamb's Book of Life. 652 absolute nobodies. Is that your story? That's what we want the story to be around the Park End area. That absolute nobodies rejected by people on planet Earth find rest in Jesus and join his cause. I will give my life for that. 3 families of priests, Hobaiah, Hakkoz, and Barzillai, also returned. This Barzillai had married a woman who was a descendant of Barzillai of Gilead, and he had taken her family name. They searched for their names in the genealogical records, but they were not found. So they were disqualified from serving as priests. Whoa, no. You cannot start acting as Jesus in the midst of all this without being a descendant of Aaron. The governor told them not to eat the priest's share of food. Shouldn't have paused there. Share of food from the sacrifices until a priest could consult the Lord about the matter by using the Urim and Thummim, the sacred lots. I got tons to say on those 2 stones, but I'm not going to go there for this because we're focusing on Jesus and the church. So a total of 42,360. What is the Urim and Thummim? All right, just briefly. Tons of people think it was an ancient stone, 2 stones, like some form of dice with yes on one side and no on the other written on them. The problem is it doesn't sit too well with Exodus 25, where the Lord promises to give commands, not give one-word answers to man-made questions. And remember that the sides of the priest's breast were open, so any loose stones would have fallen out. Urim and Thummim aren't listed in the original tabernacle inventory as separate items to be provided. Now, the words Urim and Thummim mean light and integrity. We should just touch on this because it comes up in Acts as well when they're trying to sort Judas's problems out. So it means light and integrity, the 2 characteristics needed in making decisions. Therefore, it seems best to understand Urim and Thummim, or Thummim, as the collective name for the precious stones that glistened in multicolor on Aaron's chest. These stones are described in Exodus 28. In 4 rows of 3, each one was engraved with the names of the tribes. Is this collections of stone, representing the whole people, that gave the priest the right to make the decisions and judgments on behalf of Israel before the Lord. Exodus 28. Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. So I don't think there's anything mechanical or impersonal about Urim and Thummim. I think it's to do with the priest being a wonderful counselor, and he bears the confusion and thoughts and worries of church and decides things for them and presents them to his father. So I actually think this is they're inquiring of their elected man who represents them and carries their burdens for them. Other than that, they're dice with the yes or no written on it. Ricky B. I thought she was an actress. Oh, no, that's Uma Thurman. Yeah, no, she's actually in the next book in the Bible. All right, let's crack on with this one. The sacred lots. So a total of 42,360 people returned to Judah, in addition to 7,337 servants and 200 singers, both men and women. They took with them 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 6,720 donkeys, and they arrived at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem. Some of the family leaders made voluntary offerings toward the rebuilding of God's temple on its original site, and each leader gave as much as he could. The total of their gifts came to 61,000 gold coins, 6,250 pounds of silver, and 100 robes for the priests. So the priests, the Levites, the singers, the gatekeepers, the temple servants, and some of the common people settled in villages near Jerusalem. The rest of the people returned to their own towns throughout Israel. It is kicking off in the Bible hour. I've pushed the wrong thing. Oh, yep, I'm back. Now, don't forget, the temple furniture, as we approach chapter 3, so the Ark of the Covenant represented the throne of God the Father in the highest heaven. And actually, I think the angel that sits on it and visits it is Jesus, the Son of God, but acting and carrying out the will of the Father on earth. I think that's the best way to understand any appearances of the Lord within that holiest of holies. The table of presence, so there's the Father in the highest heavens, but his will being carried out is the Son of God, it seems. The table of presence represented the Lord Jesus and the bread on it, obviously, because he offers himself as the bread of life. The oil lampstand represents the Holy Spirit, and the altar of incense where the church prays. Bible Hour knows this stuff now inside out. And it's right on the border there of heaven and earth. So, this is a glorious declaration that the local church family are held right there in the center of the Trinity on the very edge of heaven. And they start rebuilding it now in chapter 3. Now, Park End Church, if you had vast armies of opposition and haters around you, what would you build first? So they're in the 7th month. Crucial time to start the real work of church. They've got their little houses going, and now the serious work is about to begin. They have the Feast of Tabernacles because that's the reminder that this is always just a pointer of the world to come anyway, isn't it? But what would you begin with if you were to rebuild this sacred church building? And what do they begin with and why? This is a belt at chapter 3 of Ezra. In the early autumn, when the Israelites had settled in their towns, all the people assembled in Jerusalem with a unified purpose. Then Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, joined his fellow priests and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, with his family in rebuilding the altar of the God of Israel. They wanted to sacrifice burnt offerings on it, as instructed in the law of Moses, the man of God. Even though the people were afraid of the local residents, they rebuilt the altar on its old site. Then they began to sacrifice burnt offerings on the altar to the Lord each morning and evening. They celebrated the festival of shelters as prescribed in the law, sacrificing the number of burnt offerings specified for each day of the festival. They also offered the regular burnt offerings and the offerings required for the new moon celebrations and the annual festivals as prescribed by the Lord. The people also gave voluntary offerings to the Lord. Cheerful, happy church givers. 15 days before the Festival of Shelters began, the priests had begun to sacrifice burnt offerings to the Lord. This was even before they had started to lay the foundation of the Lord's temple. Then the people hired masons and carpenters and brought cedar logs from the people of Tyre and Sidon, paying them with food, wine, and olive oil. The logs were brought down from the Lebanon mountains and floated along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea to Joppa, for King Cyrus had given permission for this. The construction of the temple of God began in mid-spring, during the second year after they had arrived in Jerusalem. The workforce was made up of everyone who had returned from exile, including Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, and his fellow priests, and all the Levites. Remember, this is Ezra for the first 6 chapters, just recounting what the first wave did to fire up the second wave in real time. The Levites who were 20 years old or older were put in charge of the rebuilding of the Lord's temple. The workers at the temple of God were supervised by Jeshua and his sons and relatives, and Kadmiel and his sons, all the descendants of Hodaviah. They were helped by this task by the Levites of the family of Henadad. When the builders completed the foundation of the Lord's temple, the priests put their robes and took their places to blow the trumpet. This is my new favorite book of the Bible. This is it. This is mosaic in quality. And the Levites, descendants of Asaph, clashed their cymbals to praise the Lord, just as King David had prescribed. With praise and thanks, they sang this song to the Lord. He is so good. His faithful love endures forever. Da, 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 da. His love endures forever. Give praise. Give praise. Then all the people gave a great shout, praising the Lord, because the foundation of the Lord's temple had been laid. But many of the older priests, Levites, and other leaders who had seen the first temple wept aloud when they saw the new temple's foundation. The others, however, were shouting for joy. Any emotional church members out there who wear their heart on the sleeves, who have up days and down days and never a steady day? This was an emotional moment. Some loved it. Some felt it was just not the same. Classic church. The joyful shouting and weeping mingled together in a loud noise that could be heard far in the distance. I get it. I get both of it. I think that's my new favorite chapter in the Bible. So I asked at the start, what would we build first? We'd probably build fortress walls or machine guns to keep those nasty enemies out. And they were afraid. It said that. What did they start with? The altar of the Lord. Because the heart of church is Jesus and him crucified. And modern day Bible colleges can write pithy little articles all they like about how the ancient church didn't really know anything about the Son of God or what they were doing. And then they can just dig a little hole, climb in it, and then put a little roof on their heads and go away. Because the ancient church knew that the fear of the Lord was the beginning of wisdom. And if they get that right, they need fear no foe. And their Lord is the Lamb sacrificed before the foundation of the world. And so they sought that. They sought that first. They are teaching us how to do church in 2020. It's all around Jesus and him crucified. That's our message. That is our message. And then just do the Festival of Shelters to remind ourselves that this kingdom is going to last forever. There's a moth. Six minutes to get from Ezra 4 to Revelation 21. Here we go. Enemies oppose the building. Hey, do you ever see that there's opposition to church growth? There's opposition to church growth right away. Stephen said that. He said something that I've said a minute ago, but I forgot because of the delay. Oops, this new computer, I pressed the wrong button. Where's the Bible gone? Got it. The enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the exiles were rebuilding a temple to the Lord, the God of Israel. So they approached Zerubbabel and the other leaders and said, "Let us build with you, for we worship your God just as you do. We have sacrificed to him. Since King Esarhaddon of Assyria brought us here." Hold on a minute, though. They're enemies of Judah and Benjamin. But Zerubbabel, Jeshua, and the other leaders of Israel replied, "You may have no part in this work. We alone will build the temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, just as King Cyrus of Persia commanded us." They talk about sacrificing to God, but they're not proper church. They don't even like church members. So what are they going to do? They can't build a church work. They don't even get the message. May we never welcome into membership someone who doesn't fundamentally love the Lord and his people. They're welcome to church, and we love them and accept them and want them in, but you're not in. You're not in the real work until the Lord is your Lord and his people are your people. Then the local residents tried to discourage and frighten the people of Judah to keep them from their work. They bribed agents to work against them and to frustrate their plans. This went on during the entire reign of King Cyrus of Persia and lasted until King Darius of Persia took the throne. The evil one is at work, isn't he? Later opposition under Xerxes and Artaxerxes. Nope, can't do it. 2158, man. I can't do it. We're going to have to pause there right in the middle of opposition. But I will say this to close. So that bit, that was the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. All of us tonight, let's trust Jesus. Let's go through the waters of baptism, join his local church, spread his message about the altar and he who died on it. And those pesky menaces there, do you notice they stopped when they didn't get their way? They weren't like helpful anymore. They immediately were nasty and set plans in motion to disrupt the work. Yay, God wants Bible Hour to go on. I cannot believe we didn't make it. I really thought going into day 60 that we were going to make it. Turns out, God willing, we'll be back here on day 61 tomorrow.